Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. The current session focuses on the work of Lebov. I hope and understand by the end of this session you will be able to understand his contribution in sociolinguistics. Well, my dear students, William Lebov was born in 1927 and he is one of the prominent voices in American linguistics since the early 1960s. What is his contribution in sociolinguistics? Well, he pioneered an approach to investigating the relationship between language and society. So basically, Lebov was the person who laid the foundations for sociolinguistics. He developed a field known as variationist sociolinguistics. What does variationist sociolinguistics means? Variationist sociolinguistics deals with the sociolinguistics studies of variations of language. A major or a central doctrine of the field is that variation is inherent to human languages, to the linguistic structures. The way a language is spoken and is written differs across individuals as well as across situations encountered by the same individuals. Now, this is an important point. I hope you already understand and you know that language varies from person to person, from group to group, and society to society. Well, that is right. But at this time point, what we are focusing on in this session is that within an individual's language choices and use and usage, when we look at the language of an individual, it not only varies from other people, but according to the studies that Lebov conducted, the language of this particular individual would also vary from situation to situation, from context to context. So the same person's, the same individual's language would also have variations when that person is put into different social contexts. According to Lebov, such differences are not only normal but also necessary for language functioning, and this view challenges much of the traditionally dominant thinking and practice in linguistic theory from Saussure's times and from Chomsky's times. So this was a major change that he brought. He linked up the social aspect, the social context, the situational context into the study of language and how it affects the linguistic choices of an individual from time to time. Well, my dear students, mainstream theorists do not deny the existence of variation. They also agree with that. Rather, they tend to downplay its relevance and treat it as a superficial phenomenon obscuring a fundamental uniformity that characterizes language. What they do is that they just keep this what we would call these diversities and these differences and variations aside, and they would try to talk of one uniform form of language or one standard form of language, which actually is not a case in the real world. Lebov's research, on the other hand, demonstrates that linguistic variation is pervasive and, it is not random. It is highly structured. And through his certain researches and certain projects, he also tried to prove that. According to Lebov, it reveals regular pattern of co-occurrence between language forms, such as the pronunciation of a particular vowel sound, and social categories, such as socioeconomic class. So, even the pronunciation of certain words or the pronunciation of certain sounds, for example, certain vowel sounds, according to Lebov, would be related to certain social factors, such as socioeconomic class, etc. His approach is distinguished from others within sociolinguistics by its reliance on quantitative method. So mainly the process of data collection that he used and the perspective that he took on research was quantitative. He also examined semantic, that is the quantifiers like each and all. In terms of meaning, word each or word all is used, and the grammatical features such as contractions, deletions of the copula, etc., through the study of phonological variation, though the phonological part of variations, it was the predominant part of his studies. But in doing that, different syntactic and different semantic aspects were also explored. Most of his research is set in the English context, and his researches examine English. He was influential in the field of American dialectology. The methods that he used to collect data for his study of the varieties of English spoken in New York City was published as The Social Stratification of English, The Social Stratification of English in New York City, 1966. And it has played a very significant role in the social dialectology and its emergence as a discipline. In fact, in the late 1960s and early 1970s, his studies of the linguistic features of African American vernacular English, which is sometimes abbreviated as AAVE, they were quite influential in the field. I would also like to refer to Lebow's some other works as well. So here's another important study was the study of non-standard English conducted in 1969. Language in the Inner Cities, Studies in Black English Vernacular, conducted in 1972, and Sociolinguistic Patterns, 1972. Principles of Linguistic Change, Volume 1, Internal Factors, 1994, and the second volume, Social Factors, was published in 2001. So, he has contributed a lot in the field. The third volume of the same work was, another dimension. The first dimension was internal factors, the second social factors, and the third was based on the cognitive and cultural factors, and it was published in 2010. He also did some work in collaboration with other researchers and with other dialectologists and linguists. So one of the works with Sharon Ash and Charles Bobberge was the Atlas of North American English that was published in 2006. Overall, Lebov made a lot of contribution in the study of varieties of language in sociolinguistics.